The prison of the unwanted, the exile, and the cursed. The sewers beneath Leyndell hide macabre revelations about the choices made under the religious rule of Marika. In today's video, I will explore the Subterranean Shunning-Grounds, a space used as a dumping ground for the outcasts of the lands between, while drawing a comparison between the game's lore and social theory. The idea is to show how the events in Leyndell's underground resonate the theories of Michael Foucault in his books Discipline and Punish and Madness and Civilization. Once again, we dive into analysis of how history and literature intersect with video games lore. And who knows, maybe we'll even see more possible influences. So, let's begin. The Subterranean Shunning-Grounds are a system of sewers and dungeons running beneath the capital, Leyndell. As we walk through this maze of corridors and tunnels, it becomes clear this isn't just a sewer, it's the place where the unwanted were sent, particularly the omen creatures. The word shunning comes from the Old English verb shun, meaning to avoid or abhor. Like many English words, it has Germanic roots. Scheuen in German, meaning to avoid or fear. The word carries a heavy meaning and is often used to describe acts of deliberate social exclusion, often with religious or cultural weight. In Catholicism, excommunicated individuals are shunned. In Orthodox Judaism, someone subjected to sheren, the highest level of religious censor, is also shunned. But why were the omens excluded? It's no secret to Elden Ring players that omens are born with horns, and sometimes tails and wings, signs of their connection to the primal forces of the Crucible. For the Hornsens, such features were considered blessings, proof of divine touch. But under the Earth Tree's religion, what was once a blessing became a curse. Interestingly, the Latin word omen refers to a divine sign, a prophecy, good or bad, which fits both views, the Hornsens' reverence and the Earth Tree's rejection. Omen babies had their horns removed by force, often resulting in death. The item Omen Bairn describes the excruciating pain these infants endure, all for being seen as abomination. Please, don't hate me or curse me, please. There's a heartbreaking scene hidden in this depressing place. A lone omen standing in front of what seems to be a grave, possibly a baby's. It's here that you find the omen bairn. The only solace they found come from those few who try to treat the misbegotten omens and all those deemed impure. Perfumer Tricia and her allies were healers who tried to ease their suffering, one of the few voices of compassion for the outcasts of the lands between. Ironically, omen babies born into aristocracy weren't treated with such cruelty. Their horns aren't cut. The Earth Tree would never do that to its own. Instead, they were sentenced to eternal imprisonment. If locking them underground wasn't enough, the Golden Order used magic to restrain them. The items Margit shackles and Moog shackles give us a glimpse of this cruel treatment. A fetish bathed in golden magic. Shackles were used to bind the accursed people called the Omen, and these ones were made to keep a particular omen under strictly confinement. Though faint, the shackles still retain vestiges of power. Perhaps this fate was as cruel as physical mutilation. Isolated in the sewers, omens grew up with a bitterness that defied measure. After all, how depressing is the life of a creature who knows it was never wanted, not even by its parents. The game even suggests the omens hold some magical connection to the Crucible. Those who retain their horns can summon wraiths. My theory is that, beyond Marika's hatred of everything tied to the Hornsens and the Crucible, there was a desire to banish anything that didn't fit the ideals of faith. An omen's power represented everything the Golden Order despised. a primal force that couldn't be controlled, a physical aberration defying divine design, a reminder that faith didn't have all the answers. By the way, the Japanese name for omens in the game is Imi, which translates to abomination. To be born without the Earth Tree's blessing in a religion society like this meant being hunted, killed, or discarded. How twisted must the humor of the gods be that the royal children of Marika and Godfrey were born omens. Margot and Mog are twins brothers of the golden lineage, but because they were cursed omens, they were imprisoned in the Subterranean Shunning-Grounds. How each reacts to this fate, however, is very different. Mog never denied his accursed blood. While imprisoned underground, he made contact with the Formless Mother, an outer god. That encounter awakened the power of blood within him. The Mother of Truth craves wounds. When Mog stood before her, deep underground, his accursed blood erupted with fire, and he was besought with the defilement that he was born into. And so he becomes the Lord of Blood. Deep underground, he encountered an illusion of Mog, guarding the chapel that leads to the frenzied flame prescription. Perhaps he or his brother created this illusion to block access to the Three Fingers, a force feared by nearly all in the lands betweens. Eventually, with the shattering of the Elden Ring, Mog escapes and begins his blood dynasty in the Mogwin's palace. Margot, on the other hand, rejected his omen blood, perhaps trying to embrace the faith that rejected him. Maybe he wanted to prove he could be a worthy king. His cursed sword is described as sealing away his accursed blood. With the shattering, Margot escapes and becomes Lord of Leyndell, but never Elden Lord, as he says upon his defeat.
Tarnished, not but a fool. The Earth Tree wards off all who deign approach. We are all forsaken. None may claim the title of Elden Lord. Thy deeds shall be met with failure, just as I.
Margot, the outcast, the abomination rejected even by his mother, became the protector of the Earth Tree, even though he was never loved by those who revered the Golden Order. In the end, we find Godfrey holding his son's lifeless body, and we hear, "It's been a long time, Margot." Moments before, Margot's body dissolves into golden dust. Perhaps, finally, he found the love he thought he never existed. Cradled in the arms of his father, embraced by the Earth Tree. He loved not in return, for he was never loved, but, nevertheless, loved he did. The Omen brothers may have found some kind of freedom, but many omens perished underground. The dark and degrading environment of the sewers stands in stark contrast to the beauty of Leyndell, a space reserved only for the pure. Down there, we find not just omens, but all those deemed undesirable, the mad, the sick, the cursed. Our Tarnished encounters corpses of prisoners who die in the dark, revenants, tormented souls that found no peace, imprisoned nomads possibly linked to the Three Fingers, and the loathsome Dung Eater, a Tarnished who wanted to destroy the Earth Tree and its blessing. Interestingly, he wore armor that made him look like an omen, and his mending rune, capable of restoring the shattered Elden Ring, claimed that if everyone were cursed, desecration would no longer exist and the curse would become a blessing. This leaves the player with a lingering question. Was the Dung Eater, in his own twisted and violent way, trying to rewrite the fate of the Omens, so they no longer be seen as the cursed outcasts of the lands between? If the sewers are the dumping ground for the unwanted, a prison not just for criminals, then the Golden Order reveals its obsession with the image of divine order and perfection. The choice of the underground as a prison isn't random. Everything impure and opposed to the principles of faith must be purged. Leyndell and Marika embody the theocratic regime, in which the monarch holds both political and religious authority. In a theocracy, the laws of the state are based on religious laws, and its ruler is seen as a direct representative of the divine. One of the biggest problems with a theocracy is the lack of religious freedom and the repression of those who oppose its doctrines. As is shown in other videos, the Golden Order persecuted and punished anyone who represented the opposite of its faiths, including the misbegotten and the albinarics. And that brings me to my theory, that the Subterranean Shunning-Grounds can be understood through the lens of Michael Foucault's theory, as presented in his 1975 book Discipline and Punish, a book that aims to present how imprisonment has been addressed throughout the centuries. Until the modern Western age, rulers punished lawbreakers with physical violence. Imprisonment was reserved for those who opposed his beliefs. Prisons, as we know them today, were rare. Punishment often took the form of public humiliation or execution. In the Middle Ages, for example, stealing wood from a noble's land wasn't seen as a major crime, just a petty offense tolerated by society. But with the rise of modernity and the Enlightenment, the state's view of punishment changed. Now, punishment was justified as a way of protecting society from dangerous individuals. The prison system was created not just to reform the criminal, but to show the people that the sovereign held absolute power over everyone. In fact, Foucault argues that the concept of prison extends beyond just places for criminals. It also includes hospitals, schools, and other institutions. The point was not to reform, but to subjugate the body, much like what we see in Leyndell, where the underground prison is the eternal home of those deemed unfit to live in society. The state, embodied by Marika, subjugates others through confinement. Western prisons gained strength in the 18th and 19th centuries, along with the rise of discipline as a method of social control. A disciplined society accepts government control with docility, and the only way to create docile bodies is through constant surveillance. To achieve this, society needs systems capable of observing, recording, and shaping people's behavior, not through excessive force, but through the internalization of norms. If everything runs as expected and people obey the rules, there is no danger. But if someone strays from this expected discipline, prison becomes the only option. This leads to one of Foucault's key questions: who decides who is dangerous? Until the 19th century, this was a major problem. Foucault points out that until the 19th century, the only European country with a transparent legal system was England. In other words, if anyone could be punished, then everyone lived in fear. And from there comes the idea of constant social surveillance. If everyone fears punishment, everyone tries to stay in line. That's why I begin this chapter with the quote: "The right to punish has been shifted from the vengeance of the sovereign to the defense of society." So how does this apply to Elden Ring? Of course, I'm not saying the developers had Foucault in mind, but the theory applies perfectly. The actions of Marika and the Golden Order towards the outcasts and the prison hidden in Leyndell sewers reflect exactly what the philosopher described. Foucault shows us that modern power doesn't simply punish, it classifies, isolates, and disciplines. The Subterranean Shunning-Grounds aren't just a prison, they are a tool of social purification, a reflection of how a regime, like the Golden Order, defines what is normal, pure, and acceptable. Those who don't fit that mold, the omens, the mad, the sick, the cursed, aren't merely punished. They are erased from the world above and buried beneath it. The sewers beneath Leyndell are a physical manifestation of disciplinary power, a space of control with no redemption, where surveillance is replaced by total abandonment. It's all about making the unwanted disappear. Even the omens whose horns were cut off can live among the normal, but only as tools of violence, discarded when no longer useful. Those who resist their fate are hunted by the omen killers, vile men who hunt omens for sport. My theory is that any omen who refused to have their horns cut was hunted down and killed. All omen killers wear terrifying masks that haunt omens in their nightmares. It's disturbing to consider that the Golden Order may not only have ignored this practice, but possibly endorsed it, showing that there was no place for the outcasts in this world. Not just the omens, but also the albinarics, since we find an omen killer patrolling near the village of the albinarics. It's amazing how a game like Elden Ring can open up so many rich discussions on such varied topics. The truth is, Leyndell's Underground tells a brutal story, one of exclusion and control. And when we connect it with Foucault's philosophy, we realize Elden Ring is also about the systems that decide who gets to live in the light. Beneath its divine radiance, the Golden Order hides a grim truth. Those who defy its ideals are cast into darkness. And in the end, as we walk through the sewers, we become witness to what was erased, reminded that behind all the glory, there are always the forgotten. At last, the deeper we descend into the subterranean depths of Leyndell, the more macabre the environment becomes. Eventually, we reach the arena of Mohg, the Omen. As mentioned earlier, this is not the real Mohg, but rather an illusion created to prevent players from reaching one of the most dangerous areas in the lands between. The area deep below the Cathedral of the Forsaken, home of the Three Fingers. The name of the place is already intriguing. Cathedral suggests a holy, religious place, and yet the flame of frenzy is anything but sacred. It is as if the Golden Order, by naming it this way, intended to create a dark parody, a grim memorial to the merchants imprisoned there. Here lies the forgotten tribe, condemned for their defiance of the Golden Order. We learn that the nomads trapped deep underground suffered this horrific fate in an attempt to contain the disease of madness they carried. When we visit the frenzied flame village, we witness the terrifying effects of this disease. Madness in Elden Ring causes heavy stagger and drains both HP and FP. This incantation, inescapable frenzy, even states, causes the yellow flame of frenzy to blaze from the caster's eyes. The caster then latches onto foes, spreading the madness. To gaze into one another's eyes is truly the most intimate form of human contact. The more we interact with frenzy, the more we understand the reasons for the imprisonment of the nomads. Still, a key question remains. Was the Great Caravan really a threat? Would they have summoned the Three Fingers in a different context? Or was it the imprisonment itself that led to the rise of madness? And then comes the bigger question. Was it Shabriri who orchestrated it all? A manipulator who twisted the truth so that the tribe would be buried alive, all to unleash the Three Fingers? We'll never know for sure. Regardless, the nomadic tribe was isolated forever. Like the lepers of the Middle Ages, they received the same treatment that the sick and the mad have suffered from centuries in Western culture. Once again, it is impossible not to think of Michel Foucault and his work of outcast and marginalization. In 1961, he published Madness and Civilization, A History of Insanity in the Age of Reason, a controversial book that challenged not only historians and sociologists, but also doctors and psychologists. The central argument of the book is that madness is not a fixed biological condition, but a social and historical construct. The way societies have dealt with mental illness has changed over time, shaped not just by science or medicine, but by culture, morality, and politics. In the Middle Ages, madness was often seen as a form of wisdom, mystery, or even divine inspiration. Fools were sometimes considered to have a special connection to truth or to God. It wasn't the mad who were locked away, it was the lepers, the physically diseased. During the Renaissance, madness was a symbol of artistic and poetic genius, still integrated in some way into society. But everything changed with the Age of Reason and the rise of the Enlightenment. From the 17th and the 18th centuries, madness began to be viewed as a moral failing, a sign of someone unfit to live in society. The mad were now segregated and locked up in asylums, often alongside the poor and criminals. As reason and order were idealized, madness became dangerous. The once empty leprosariums were now turned into mental institutions. Places that held the sick now held the insane, the vagrant, and the lawbreaker. Spaces for the exiled. There, they would no longer be a problem. There, they would no longer be seen. The mad are ripped from society and made invisible. The Shunning-Grounds in Elden Ring serve the same symbolic purpose as the asylums and prisons Foucault describes, places meant to hide or exile the mad and the unwanted. Burying the merchant deep underground was seen as the best way to purify the urban space, far easier than trying to understand what was truly happening. And in fact, we know that the merchants weren't in prison only for spreading madness. The nomadic merchants Trouser Iten states, these merchants once thrived as the Great Caravan, but after being accused of heretical beliefs, their entire clan was rounded up and buried alive far underground. Then they chanted a curse of despair and summoned the flame of frenzy. This confirms they did not follow the teachings of the Golden Order. Yet, another group persecuted for being different. Once again, we see prison used as a tool of social control. Thus, Elden Ring critiques the obsession with order and the way society seeks to exclude everything they find strange or dangerous. And, curiously, the player can choose to embrace madness, to burn it all down, to see the order collapsed into flame.
Burn the Erd Tree to the ground and incinerate all that divides and distinguishes. Ah, may chaos take the world. May chaos take the world!
What lies beneath Leyndell is not just a dungeon, it is a provocation to the most attentive player. Through the Subterranean Shunning-Grounds, Elden Ring tells a story about power, exclusion, and the need to control what doesn't fit. Whether through the imprisoned omens or the buried nomadic merchants, the game shows the structures Foucault explored, the mechanisms by which societies define the normal, isolate the mad, and erase the unwanted. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoy it. Leave a like and subscribe for more discussion about lore, history, and literature. Until next time, see ya!